What's up guys, Houndish here, and today, of course, we have a huge update to Destiny 2 in the form of April Update 2.2.1. Alongside this, Arc Week is going to be kicking off shortly, but we do have patch notes for some of the changes, so they talk about weapons, a couple of adjustments to some popular weapons right now, as well as a bunch of bug fixes, fixes to exotic armor, and Bungie give us specific numbers on how they've adjusted the drop rates for items in Dreaming City, across the raids, and a bunch of other stuff. So guys, we're going to break down all of the patch notes right here. If you don't fancy reading through, you can give them a listen, but if you enjoy the video, a like below super helps me out. Otherwise, let's get right into it. So we'll talk about subclass changes and stuff in a moment. We have spoken about those already, so let's start out with some of the weapon changes. So firstly, for the last word, they've added a timer to the Fanfire perk. So essentially it should show a timer in the UI for how long those perks are active now. But another adjustment we weren't anticipating would be for the Wardcliff coil. So they've reduced PvE damage by 25% against bosses and vehicles. As I said, definitely not a change we're anticipating. Wardcliff has been pretty hot for a little while right now, so let me know your thoughts about it. Of course, it's not really going to change Wardcliff in PvP or anything like that, but for some of the boss burns and things that have been going on, I guess it will be less potent for that now. There are some of the general weapon bug fixes, so things like fixed a material on Cold Heart that was no longer shiny, adjustments to perk descriptions, fixes to problems with ammo on weapons, stuff to do with ornaments, and a couple of other bits. So you can check those in the patch notes if they sound interesting. But in terms of armor fixes, some stuff that affects exotics as well. So using Getaway Artist with the Storm Grenades now correctly spawns a supercharged Arc Soul. The Crown of Tempests once again works with Ball Lightning. And then for the Stronghold Titan exotic, it will no longer drain heavy ammo while guarding with Black Talon. So some good fixes there to exotics and armor pieces, but once again, let us know your thoughts about things like the adjustment to Wardcliff. We weren't necessarily expecting to get detailed kind of numbers for the drop rate changes, but Bungie have actually given some. So right here, they talk about items in the Last Wish raid. So for 1,000 voices, they've increased the drop rate from 5% to 10%. So definitely a bit of a buff right there. When it comes to the glittering key used to acquire the Last Wish ship, that drop rate has been increased from 5% to 20%. So that's going to be much easier to obtain. The Wishmaker shell has also seen a buff to 20% drop rate, up from 2%, and then for the Clemson knife or the Last Wish Sparrow, it has gone from 5% to 20%. So good luck if you are hunting Last Wish cosmetics, but then for Dreaming City stuff, the ship has been buffed from 2 to 20%, of course coming from Shattered Throne, the Starlight Shell buffed from 2 to 20%, and then for the Sparrow, it's gone from 5% to 20%. So across the board, definitely pretty significant buffs for those drops. When it comes to the lore bucks, they've increased the drop rate for Cade Stash lore from 40 to 100%, so definitely positive. And when it comes to planetary chests, once again, buffed from 4% to 50%. Dreaming City lore for public event completions buffed from 2.5 to 50% drop rate. In the Ascendant Challenge, 2.5 to 100%. For the Blind Well, 5 to 50%, and that's through tier 1, 2, and 3. And then for Lost Sectors, 1.25 to 100%. Man, that was super low. And they've updated the Maracina lore book, which was actually missing a couple of entries. Now for Tangled Shore lore, during a flashpoint, in public events, 6.5% to 50%, Heroic Adventures 16 to 50, and Lost Sectors 3 to 50%. So really good changes for those, and you should be seeing them drop much more regularly. Now for Gunsmith, reputation packages now only award Gunsmith weapons, and 4 new exotic catalysts are available to drop in Nightfall Strikes and the Crucible. Of course, that's Prospector, Wrecking, Hardlight, and all of those will come from Nightfalls and Strikes, and then Soros Regime, which is specific to the Crucible. On top of this, Xur's inventory will now offer randomly rolled perks for armor. Bungie have made some adjustments to quests and bounties, and importantly, the weekly lockout reset for Invitations of the Nine has been moved to Thursday, so that'll be on the daily reset, and players will have up to 2 extra days to complete them before being locked out of a new invitation on Friday. Otherwise, if there are any bounty or quest-specific issues you've been tracking, you can check those out in the full patch notes, as well as some adjustments to pursuits. So Ada 1's going to offer all of the weapon frames every week, fixed an issue where players could only acquire pinnacle weapons once per character, and Gambit Prime now counts to unlock the weekly Gambit Clan Engram. There's some general changes that affect gear. The Arsenic Bite now drops with random rolls, and they've removed Vestian Dynasty from the general loot pool. So Arsenic Bite will be much more common, and you can get random perks. They've increased the drop rate of the Polestar 2 Ghost Shell from 1% to 4%, and again some other adjustments to triumphs and general fixes that are pretty specific or minor changes. Now of course for Reckoning and their weapons, Reckoning tier 2 and 3 boss kills now always have a chance to award a Gambit Prime weapon. Chances for weapon rewards increase each time a boss is killed without a drop. Players near the bank should no longer be able to see waypoints until they jump through the portal, and this is in Reckoning specifically. On top of this, in Gambit Prime, some Reckoning weapons have a chance to drop as match completion rewards, and once again chances increase after each Gambit Prime match without a drop. There is some quality of life stuff for Gambit. An invasion kill now heals 8% of the Primeval's health, down from 12. The invasion portal cooldown time during the Primeval phase has been increased to 40 seconds, up from 30 seconds. They do say that a boss has been reintroduced to Gambit Prime. That's a very interesting one. We don't know what that is specifically. Could be the Ascendant Servitor, of course, but there are some other minor adjustments to maps and stuff that shouldn't be overly noticeable. But on top of this, for Gambit, high value targets now have a chance to spawn during the first round of a match, and there are some additional adjustments to private matches for Gambit, as well as some of the medals. On top of this, Nightfall tickets have a min-max and a plus or minus 25 for incrementing power reduction, and this will allow players to get to the plus 100 power reduction easier to increase the score multiplier. In competitive, they fixed an issue where players who are disconnected from Destiny servers couldn't rejoin games in the competitive Crucible playlist, so that's a good one. But an interesting change here, players will always now see equipped titles when expecting another player, but otherwise there are some general UI fixes. An issue where PC performance would slowly degrade over time has apparently been fixed, so that could affect performance for some of you guys. But otherwise, that is really the bulk of the changes outside of the subclass stuff. Now, we did speak about these in a video a few days ago, but in case you want to hear them again, maybe jump into the game and try some of these subclasses out, then I'll run that section from my previous video right here. But otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in. Let us know any of your thoughts on the changes we've got right here. But if you've enjoyed this video, a like below is super appreciated. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe. But otherwise, I will catch you guys very soon. So in terms of changes to ARC subclasses, for the Striker's Code of the Juggernaut, which of course is the bottom tree for the Striker, they've increased all weapon damage for the duration of the frontal assault buff, so 25% against combatants and 20% against players. On top of this, the duration is increased from 10 seconds to 16 seconds, and the buff timer is now displayed on the HUD. So having Frontal Assault active is actually going to give you bonus weapon damage, which is really pretty interesting. But then for Knockout, melee damage has been increased from 25 to 60%, and it now also triggers once you have dealt 60% damage to a target. So any damage done after 60% will refresh the timer, and it will still also trigger off shield pop, but the melee is no longer consumed after one melee attack, and the duration has been increased from 3 to 5 seconds. So that actually could be some pretty potent stuff right there. But then Bungie talk about the Arc Strider. So for Combination Blow, bonus melee damage can now be stacked 3 times. It will require a melee ability kill for each stack, but the buff increases melee damage by 60% per stack in PvE, and 22.7% per stack in PvP. And for comparison, the ability used to be 1 stack and increased melee damage by 50%, and kills with this ability will now heal 40 health in addition to starting health regen. Then for Deadly Reach, they've increased the buff duration from 6 to 8 seconds, and the buff is no longer consumed by a melee hit. So that was Combination Blow and Deadly Reach on the Way of the Warrior Arc Strider, but there is also Way of the Wind. And for Disorienting Blow, they've increased the disorient distance by 50% and increased the duration of disorient on players from 1.5 to 2 seconds. Focused Breathing has seen increased dodge recharge bonus while sprinting by 100%, and Combat Meditation has increased bonus grenade and melee regeneration, while blooded by 25%. They've increased damage resistance while dodging from 25% to 40% in PvP for lightning reflexes, and in PvE that is 63 to 70%. So again, these are very specific changes to ARC subclasses, but they appear to be pretty potent. We do have the Stormcaller's Storm Trance, top and bottom tree, where damage now scales up to 150% over 5 seconds of continuous use of the attack. They've also updated the effects and audio to support this functionality. So that's some pretty crazy stuff. But then there is the attunement of Conduction for the Stormcaller, and Chain Lightning Melee can now chain up to 5 times, up from 1, and each individual target can be hit twice. On top of this, chain damage has been decreased from 50 to 31 damage per chain hit. But then for Arc Web, it can now chain to many, many more targets and back and forth between targets. The amount of chaining varies based on use, and they say they'll leave it to the players to discover. On top of this, it will have increased chain range from 10 meters to 12 meters, and chaining arc damage now reduces the cooldown of your grenade, and this works with Arc Web chains and chains from Chain Lightning Melee. You'll earn 3% energy per instance of chain damage in PvE, and 10% in PvP. And then finally, we get onto the Stormcaller's attunement of the elements, which is the bottom tree. And for Electrostatic Surge, they've increased the bonus regeneration rate of Rift by 600% per nearby friendly guardian. They do say this does sound insane, and it is a pretty big boost, but previously it was very low. On top of this, it will extend Rift duration from 15 to 20 seconds, and they've added a notification in the UI for when the buff is actually active. When it comes to Arc Soul, they have extended the duration by 50%. So that's some pretty crazy stuff, guys. And really, this comprises this kind of interesting event that Bungie are doing right here. We've got a Sandbox update with some very significant changes to Arc subclasses, and then they really want to kind of feature that with the content that we'll see, you know, Arc Singe, Arc Bounties, Mayhem, and that kind of stuff. So let us know your thoughts about it down below. And of course, we'll have to see if any other things pop up that we're not expecting. But then Bungie talk about non-Arc subclass changes as well. And for the Nova Warp, it is getting a bit of love. They say that they did hit this subclass pretty hard when they nerfed it previously, so now they've reduced the initial charge detonation energy cost by 20% and reduced energy cost of holding the charge detonation by 7%. They've reduced the time required to fully charge the charge detonation from 0.9 seconds to 0.7 seconds, reduced Dark Blink costs by 20%, and increased base super duration from 18 seconds to 22 seconds. So the super lasts longer, consumes a little bit less energy, and generally you can make those kind of attacks a little bit faster. So let us know your thoughts about that down below. They do say they're trying to kind of ease in to a nicer middle ground change than what they've done before, so hopefully it will be good. But then for the Dawnblade's Everlasting Fire perk, they've tuned the amount of super gained from Everlasting Fire, and the initial return is increased from 10% to 13%, but then the return decays linearly over the course of 30 kills from 13% to 0.75% returned per kill. And Bungie say you may be asking about Spectral Blades. Bungie say they know it's out of bounds, and they're working right now on a few tweaks to bring it back in line. So essentially, Spectral Blades at some point is going to be a bit less potent, but we'll have to wait and see how that pans out.